Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Oh, typical, you start the video and you start coughing. I hope you're all well. Welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to all my new followers. It's lovely to have you with me. It's lovely to know that some of you are watching the videos, and thank you very much for all your feedback. It really is much appreciated. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to create a card, mainly because at the moment I've only got time for cards at the moment, with lots of gardening going on, etc. But it could be a journal page, it can be anything you want, but I'm concentrating on cards at the moment just because I'm a little bit restricted with time. What I've got this time is I've got a piece of craft card. You could use a piece of packaging if you don't have any craft card, or you could cut a piece of cardboard up, no problem at all if you want to upcycle. And this is 4 inches by 7.5 inches, so that's 4 by 7.5, and you can have it that way if you wish, but you see, now I'm thinking, do I want it that way or do I want it that way? No, I'm going for that way. Oh, don't start a video, Tracy, and then and ah about what you're going to do. I do it every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line this stencil up just so that the biggest circle is slightly off centre, so I've got quite a few of the little details as well. And what I've got is I've got twisted citron and I've got peeled paint distress oxide inks. Now what you can do is you can hold this in place if you wish. You can hold the stencil in place with a piece of low tack tape if you want it to stay there. So I could create a hinge. Not that there's much room to create a hinge. I could create a hinge by just placing low tack tape. This is Scotch removable tape, so that'll just create a hinge just for your stencil. So just place that down. I'm still going to hold the stencil in place because I haven't attached the low tack tape onto the card because I want to get the edge to edge. So what I'm doing is I've got the Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just ensuring that I've got a good layer of ink. Make sure that you prime the ink blending tool with a good layer of ink. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold that in place, and then I'm just going to blend very lightly over the card. And just adding the layers of ink. The more time you take to blend the ink, the more depth that you get. Obviously, because we're working on craft card, it's going to be a lot more subtle. It's not going to be as in your face as if you did it with white card. So I placed the stencil just so that I'd got quite a bit of the smaller circles and that the biggest circle was just off at the top, mainly because I wanted some of that little detail as well. And as you can see, I do keep re-inking my ink blending tool just because it stops it from dragging. You need to make sure you've got plenty of ink on your ink blending tool, because if you don't have enough ink, then it drags, and that's when you get frustrated because you don't get a blend because you haven't got enough ink onto your ink blending tool. So just remove the twisted citron, and then we'll pick up some of the peeled paint. Just picking up a good layer of that ink and just apply some of the peeled paint. And it's just random. It's nothing too specific. Just quite random. Let me just check. Oh yes, it has picked that up. It's very subtle, but it has picked that up. Just blending a little bit firmer with the darker colour, and just lifting it up just to check that I'm happy with that. Just a little bit more of the peeled paint. So I'm just going to lift this up. I can put this back over afterwards just so that you can see. Let me just lift that up to the camera just so that you can see that green on there. Now what I'm going to do is, I don't want to move that, but I'm going to give it a little dry. I'm just giving it a little dry off camera. Nothing specific, just giving it a little dry. I obviously don't want to heat that stencil because I don't want to melt anything. So I'm just giving it a little bit of a whack with the heat tool, just so that that ink is dry. And I nearly unplugged that then, but I don't want to unplug it because I need it for something else. The problem is there are only so many techniques, and it gets very difficult to keep thinking up different ideas. But I'm just wiping my stencil just so that I don't grab that green. And of course I didn't bring any kitchen roll up because, do you know, it's funny, because I've had no kitchen roll up in the craft room for ages, I didn't bring any up, and I keep forgetting to bring it up. Just blot that stencil. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my anti-static bag, and I'm just going to apply the anti-static bag just over the card, just so that when I add a little bit of embossing, it's not going to stick everywhere, just where I want it. And of course I started the video and didn't get any cut and dry foam. I get so excited about starting a video and then I forget about certain pieces. So what I'm going to do now is place this underneath, and I'm going to line the stencil back up again. Just line that back up again. So that's it. I think that's it. Just push it down a little bit more. There we go. So just take your time just to line that stencil back up, because you know, you may not have got the card completely straight when you were doing the stenciling, so you just need to make sure that it's lined back up. Just make sure. Just take a couple of minutes just to line your stencil up. Doesn't matter if it's not bang on, that's not a problem. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the smaller circle stencil. So it doesn't matter whether you've used ovals, triangles, squares, it doesn't make any difference. So I'm going to take the smaller stencil, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Versamark ink. So ink up my cut and dry foam. I could take it like this, but the problem with that is I'm not going to get in to the fine detail. So I'm not going to pick up all the circles if I'm not careful. So I'm just adding some Versamark ink through the stencil back onto the circles that I've already got. So let's have some smaller circles here. So you're just doing it randomly. So let's get some really tiny circles in this one. Like so. So I'm just going over, just with the Versamark, just to add. I have no idea when my focal image is put here, I might hide some of it. So we just need to make sure that we cover some around this area here, because we will cover some of it up. So just add a couple of the dots here. So I'm using some of the smaller detail. Some of the smaller detail in like the little half moons Whoops. Now she says moving it. Let me see how many I've got. Let me just see. Yes, so we've missed that circle. So just place it over. I've just moved it, so just place it back over. Just take your time. You can hold it in place, as I've said, with a piece of cut and dry foam. So I don't think I've got anything in that one. So we haven't got anything in here. That's the reason I put it back over, because I didn't think I'd got anything in there. Let's just have a look. You can actually see where you've put your embossing ink. You can actually see where it is. So I'm just going to place it back over, because we've got these smaller circles here. So it doesn't take too much to place it back over. It's not a problem. So just add a couple of little bits. Where do we want? Let me just see if we can get through that fine detail there. So I'm just adding some embossing ink here and there through my stencil. Just see if I can see that. It's not too much of a problem if I don't, because I can add more or less if I wish. Yes, I think that one doesn't look like it's got anything on, does it? So you just spend a couple of minutes doing this. So there's one circle I keep missing, and I think it's that one there, that one. So I keep missing this little circle here. Let me just put, because I mean, it may be covered up when I've put the focal image on, but it's better to do it now than afterwards. Right, what we can do now is just grab our copier paper, and what we can do is take some gold embossing powder, and you can see where it's touched. You can see you've got little touches of gold embossing. Can you see where you've got the embossing powder? So I'm going to add a focal image here. So you can add as much or as little of that as you wish. Let me just get rid of that. I can now move the stencil out of the way. Let's move that low tack tape. Just move this embossing powder so we've got a clean area. That's it, it just gives us a clear area. Now, some people actually heat the embossing from underneath because they believe it gives a smoother finish. That's entirely up to you. For me, I don't really see the difference, but that's entirely up to you if you heat it from below or on top. What I do is I tend to make sure that the heat gun is nice and hot, and then I will melt the embossing powder. Just stand up just so that when that starts going, we can see that. There we go, it's just going now. So when you've started to heat, just make sure that you move your heat tool, when it starts to melt, move your heat tool, because you don't want to overheat, because it'll just go back to being flat, which you don't want. Just a couple of little pieces here. There we go. So we can just unplug that. And what you can see is that gold gives us a little bit of opulence just to the design. Just makes it sort of a little bit more interesting. Okay. And then what I want to do is I'm going to decide which side, you see, so that is going to be covered up anyway, because I want to add a circle of card just to echo those circles that we've had before. So just make sure I don't want the big, no, I don't want the big one, I want that smaller one. So just going to draw around that. Now you can die cut your circles out, you can draw around a container, whatever works for you. I have got a die, but sometimes when I'm doing a video, depending how things flow, I just cut it out while I'm doing the video. You could have that already die cut out, whichever you prefer. You know, I tell you what, it doesn't half get warm when you've got that heat tool on. Phew. It's absolutely boiling. So this is going to go here, like so. So I'm just going to distress the edges. And I'm going to distress them over my pyjamas rather than mind you, I'll do it here so that you can see. Just distress those edges. And then I'll flick them onto the floor because that's what I do. And then when I'm hoovering up, I say, where have all these bits come from? And it's me. Whew. Talk about warm. So what I'm going to do is this is going to go here, like so. And what I'm going to do is I just want to decide whether which character I'm going to add. Now to do that, let's not lose his little arms. I can do that by just, you see, I think the little mouse this time. I think we'll have the little mouse. I think he's lovely. So it's on stamp set Quirky Friends 466. So that's the stamp set I'm going to use this time. I do like to mix everything up a little bit if I can, as much as I can. He's got a little bare hand attached to him. What I'm going to do is just add a little bit of stamping just to the background of this circle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Hibiscus stamp set 458 because it's got a fantastic background stamp on here, and I'm just going to use that. And I'm going to use the peeled paint, or I might use, there's a beautiful, it's if you can find it, oh I can, there's a beautiful green in VersaFine Claire, two beautiful greens. Now you can use your oxides if you want, but just remember that's not permanent. But what I'm going to use is I'm going to use Verdant and Shady Lane. I just think those two are lovely. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of stamping just to the background of my circle. So I've just started with the Verdant and I'm just adding a few little touches of the Shady Lane. And I'm just going to add a little pop of that stamping just on the circle. I mean, look at that for the greens. Just think they look absolutely gorgeous, stunning. So this will be placed here, and what I do is I do faff a little bit, and I want my mouse here like this. So he will go here like this. I may had with a H add another circle. We will see. Just don't know yet, but I definitely want that there. What I'm going to do now is stamp my mouse. And I always say, just take your time and let things develop. Don't and sometimes don't overthink it. Sometimes simple projects are just as effective as those with 150 layers. They can be just as beautiful. And I'm a great believer of, as long as you're happy and you've enjoyed it, nothing else matters. So we're just going to stamp our little mouse like so. Nice and easy to stamp. Let's put him back so we remember. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a paper stump because I like shading this way. So I'm going to use my 2HB pencil, and I'm just going to do a bit of shading with the pencil. So I'm just going to add, and I do just scribble, and I mean scribble. Just around, and I sort of go around the edges first because I can blend it out afterwards. So just going around the edges, and then I can blend that out. And these projects always look better off camera. In real life, they always look a bit better. So I'm just going around, just scribbling. Let's see if I can remember to do his arms this time. Last time I didn't remember to do the poor thing's arms. Don't know what I have. What it is about arms, but I just forget to call them. So just very relaxing this is, and then you just take your paper stump and you just blend. Now if you add it around the edges first, you're bringing in that pencil into the centre, but it's actually lighter in the centre where you want it to be a little bit lighter. So I'm just blending that out. You know, I'm adding reasonable pressure, but not so much pressure that it makes my hand ache. So this is like my first layer. A first layer of pencil. And if I add it to the edges, I can already leave light areas. You can add the light areas back in, if you wish, afterwards, just with a white pen, whichever suits you best. But just take a few moments just to blend that out nicely. Sometimes we're in a bit of a rush when we do a video because we're aware that you're watching and we don't want you to get bored, so we tend to rush it a little bit. Whereas when I'm at home and I haven't got anybody watching me, or I haven't got to do anything to a time scale, I do take a lot more time. So just blend that out. Now we need to bring a little bit of life to his eyes. Let's give him some, just give him some little depth to his eyes. We'll add a little bit of white to that. Just add a little bit of colour to his nose. And then what you can do is you can go back in with your pencil, and where it's darker, so under his little ear here, it's very difficult to say that, ear here, without a H and with a H. So just add a little bit of darkness just below his ear there. And then I want to add a little bit of darkness here, just where it joins. So add that little bit of darkness there. and then add that little bit of shading. And just take your time just to blend that out. Don't be in too much of a rush. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading under his eye, just so it's a little bit darker, just under his eye there. Just to give a little bit of shade. And then you can make it a little bit darker. Just here. Just give it a little bit more. Let me lift that up just so that you can see that he comes to life when you just add him with the pencil. It would help if I'd done his little tail. His poor little tail is not blended. Poor mouse. So just so that you can see that. And when you look in camera, you can see where you haven't blended enough. That's why sometimes, if you're not sure about placement or what to do, sometimes when you look through it, look through the lens on a camera, it's surprising how differently you see things. So and then this needs a little bit more blending. Just so that you can see that. I love this little mouse. I just think he's absolutely lovely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut him out. And it's up to you whether you leave a white border. If you leave a white border, he's going on that white circle, so you won't see much anyway. But I'm going to leave a white border anyway, because it's actually easier to cut out if you leave a white border. But we all cut out differently, and I actually enjoy the cutting out, so it doesn't bother me at all how much cutting out I have to do. But I'm aware that some people don't like cutting out, so if you want to make it a little bit simpler, then the best way is to leave a white border. And move your card rather than your scissors. Moving your card makes it so much easier to cut that character out. You just cut his little arm out. And when he's cut out, he always looks so much better. And always work with a smallish piece of card. If you've got too much card in your hand and you're trying to cut it out, well, it's a bit cumbersome, and it becomes a nightmare to cut anything out because you're handling too much card. So if you just have a small piece of card, it makes it so much easier. It's got a long tail. There we go. I've got my fingers stuck now. But so you can see, ain't he lovely? I just think he's lovely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this stamp again from the Hibiscus stamp set, and I'm just going to take a little bit of the alphabet, a little bit, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that green. Just to the mouse, just because then it coordinates with the touch in the background. So a little bit of green to him. So my little mouse is going here. He may hold something in a minute, and I will need some washi tape. But we'll do that in a second. Just want to check if I want to add another circle. Let me just draw another circle out, because then I can judge whether I want that circle or not. So I'm just going to cut a smaller circle. I always end up, as usual, in 3mm of space. But with the YouTube videos, I tend to work a little bit differently. If you're going live, then you might be more prepped because you realise that you're live. But when I do YouTube videos, I tend to just go with it, go with the flow and just go for it. So that it's a bit more free, a little bit more relaxed. So just a little bit different on YouTube. Just cut that out. So I haven't got many, a lot of the time I haven't got many pieces pre-prepped. Because I like to sometimes go with the flow. So just distressing those. Got these bits everywhere now. So I may just add that circle there. And that will need a little bit of green stamping. So again, I'm going to use the stamp from the Hibiscus. And I'm going to use the Verdant ink. Verdant and Shady Lane. It's a Shady Lane, isn't it? And Shady Lane. Do love those two colour greens together. Just beautiful. Love that stamp. I also like it as well because I don't like to forget the new stamps. They're just as important as the older stamps. Lovely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add, I like where all that is, so we'll stick that down. We'll stick this down. Just move this out the way. And we'll just stick these down. If you can hear the water outside, it's my pond. I've got the windows open to my craft room, which overlooks the garden, which is lovely. But I'm aware you may be able to hear the water. So I don't want you to think, you know, it's anything other than my pond. Just add those there. Add my mouse here, like so. Love this little mouse. Just adding a little bit of adhesive here, there and everywhere, just so that I can stick him down properly. Just place that down, and then I always use a piece of copier paper just to press it down. It means I'm not getting any fingerprints over anything, and it just sticks it down. So we've got that nicely stuck down. So let's grab a little bit of washi tape. I've got an itchy finger. Just grab a little bit of washi tape. And we're going to ground. So I'm using cut, tear and layer washi tape, which is my washi tape. We're just going to ground him a little bit. We don't want him floating in midair. So we just add a little bit of that. Just a little bit more. I just like the washi tape to look sort of random-ish. I don't want it all the way across like that. So just tear, and then I just add this bit on the top that I've just torn. Just makes it look a little bit more random if you do it that way. So just tear a little bit more of that washi, just to balance it out a little bit. And a little bit more. I love adding little bits of interest. Just makes me happy. and a touch more. I know when I'm ready, when it's, that's it. So I'm just sticking it all, what she says, sticking it all together. Just slipped out my hand then. Because what this will do is I'll add this to a white mount, just so that it pops a little bit more. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little, now I could add the friendship sentiment, or I could just add the word, the mouse word, and I think I'm going to add the mouse word. Just like so. Do I want that in the green, or do I want that in the black? We'll have that in the black. Do you like how I'm talking to you? Like you're going to answer me back. I bet sometimes you listen to these videos and think I've lost the plot at times. So just add the mouse sentiment. And this could quite easily be a journal page, because all you do with the journal page is do an elongated version, if you wish, all the way across the centre of the journal page. And then you could add 3 characters, 3 mice, or the bear, or the rabbit that I've got. Just make sure you've got clean hands. And then, we did just add a little bit of green using the ink that was on the ink blending tool from before. I do like my little clusters. I do like adding clusters to my designs, little clusters. I think he's going to be holding it, so just lift his finger up a little bit and he's going to be holding that little mouse sign. So just add that. You could even stamp onto parchment and gold emboss the word mouse if you wish. I like the freshness of the white. So I'm just going to take my Inktense pencil, just grab my water, just add a little bit of water there, and I'm just going to just draw around the circles, these circles even, not this circles. Just draw around just to make those pop a little bit more. And I do tend to turn my card just because it makes it a little bit easier. And I'm doing that on both circles. There we go. Then we're just going to blend that out. Now you're not using a watercolour card, obviously it's a craft card, but that Inktense pencil will still react. It's reactive with water. The only difference is, obviously, if you used a watercolour card, it would blend out even further because of the movement in that card. Just... and you've got that distress oxide underneath, so yes, it reactivates some of that, but not that you can see because the black is obviously more intense. So I'm just going to get a different water brush, and what I'm going to do now, she says, no room, but we're going to try. What we're going to do is take the Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, spritz that with water, and then we're going, not with the lid on, we're going to pick that up, and then we're going to add some splatters That's better. Just some splatters of the Distress Oxide colour. And I will show you that afterwards. We'll just clean that brush off, clean our mess up. Try to remember kitchen roll next time, Tracy, just so that you can see just those details on there. I'm just going to get a few more bits. What I'm going to get is one of these little clips. But we'll add the clip afterwards, because we'll add this to the white card first, because the clip, if we lift it up, the clip will tip upside down. So just adhere this to the white mat. The white mat is 1/4 inch bigger than the card. The card was 4 inches by 7.5 inches. I just fancied doing something that was more elongated this time. Just like so. And then we're going to add that to a card blank, which is 4.5 by 8. It always looks different when you mat and layer everything. I always think it just looks so much more professional when you mat and layer everything. Just take your time just to get that so it's looking reasonably. Just take your time just to make sure that that sticks on there. Bend your card a little bit just to make sure it just sticks on there, just so that you can see that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my little clip here. I do love my little embellishments, I have to say. They just make me happy. Just place that in there. And I'm just going to add a few splatters of white Posca pen, just to the background. I just think the Posca pen finishes it nicely. And then I did have another piece. Did I use that piece of card? I don't think I did. There it is, straight in front of me. And then I've cut a piece that goes on the inside. So it's the same size as before, 4 by 7.5. And that's going to go on the inside. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to take, I've just dumped him, come here little mouse. I'm just going to take my little mouse, ink him up, just giving him a good inking like I do with anything, and then make sure I've got the right side of the card. Just add the little mouse here. So this is just going to be the insert of the card. And I always like the insert to just be a mere suggestion of what's on the front of the card. So we take a little bit more of that washi tape. Let's tear this again if we can. Don't want that much. I'm not very pernickety, am I? So just add the washi. just so it's a suggestion of what's on the front. Okay, and then if you've got a little bit of time, just add a little bit of shading just to the mouse. So just go around and give him a little bit of shading, just as we did before. Just take your time. It looked like he'd got a moustache then. Just a little bit of the tail, and then just blend that out. And it's good because on the craft card it actually looks a little bit darker because you're not on the white. So just take your time just to blend that out. So if you wanted, you could create another card, just a clean and simple card with the mouse on its own. So it's nice just to think of ways that you can keep extending your rubber stamps. So what I'm going to do now, as I did before, I'm going to add a little bit of shading here and a little bit of shading there. Just so it's a little bit darker. And how different it looks on the craft. It really does look different. Let's just shade his eyes a little bit. I can't forget his eyes. So just shade those a little bit. Then I'm just going to get a gel pen, and I'm just going to go back to the card, and I'm just going to add a little bit of white here, a little bit of white there, just on his eye. Just add it a little bit here as well, and there, and just add a little bit of white because it's on the craft card, just to brighten it up a little bit. Just because it's on the craft card, just to give it a little bit of brightness. And then, just so it coordinates with the front, just add a few, not many, splatters. Really, we should have added the splatters at the end, but that doesn't matter because what I'm just going to do is take a little touch of this stamp and just add a little bit of the green. You're not going to see it much, but just so that you can see that little bit of green. Then what you do is you then add this to the insert. Obviously you would wait until everything was dry. I don't recommend adding an insert when you've still got your splatters all wet, but I do like to show you the card finished. So just so you can see that, you've got your front of your card, you've got those touches of gold on there, you've then got your little mouse with the stamping in the background, and then you've got your insert, just so it coordinates a little bit more. But I think just for a little bit more, I'm just going to ink this little bit of alphabet up again. Just open my insert, which is easier said than done, and I'm just going to add, that's better, a little bit of stamping, just so that you can see the green. And that is our card finished. I hope you enjoyed that, and I've got a couple of minutes just to share with you about an up-and-coming workshop that I've got planned. So let me just get my diary out so that I can remember the dates, because there's that many dates it's impossible to remember everything. So I've got a workshop. It'll be a live workshop. We go live at 10 AM on both days, and it's on the 10th and 11th of July, and it's to create this sewing themed tag. And we create it all. Obviously you'll look for your own ephemera. These are my stamps, so we use the stamps, the sewing theme stamps, but things like the vintage spool and everything, they're just in my collection. So you will maybe gather some ephemera, bits of old patterns and things like that, and we'll create this piece together. I'm just waiting for some coloured pins to add to this. So it's actually called Sewing Mends the Soul Workshop, and if I just put it that way, just so that you can see the size of the tag, it's a medium size ephemera, medium size etc. tag by Tim Holtz, but you can use anything you wish. You can use a canvas, whatever you like. But if you'd like to join me for the workshop, we start at 10 AM on both days, but it'll be available to watch afterwards should you not be able to join me live. If you'd like to join me, my email is tracy@craft-addicts.co.uk, Tracy without an E, and I will add those details to the description box just so that you've got those. And I'll just bring in that card just so that you can see the card we created. I'm really pleased with that. Love how that's turned out. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a lovely week. Thank you once again for all your support, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.